Have you ever stopped to think about what a really long journey, maybe decades long, would actually feel like? One filled with all sorts of unexpected trials, surprising rules from above, moments of just incredible faith, but also, yes, some pretty serious human rebellion. We often feel like we've got a handle on the main Bible stories, but sometimes when you really dig in, do a proper deep dive, there's just so much more beneath the surface. So today, that's exactly what we're doing. We're taking that deep dive into the biblical book of Numbers. We'll be drawing a lot from John D. Currid's excellent work, A Study Commentary on Numbers.
Mhm.
Our mission really is to navigate this ancient text, pull out some key insights, and maybe uncover some surprising facts that shaped Israel's massive 40-year journey through the wilderness. It's more than just wandering, it's about becoming a people.
Absolutely. And it's interesting, right from the start, the name Numbers. That comes to us from the Greek Septuagint, the Old Greek translation, and it
Whoa.
points straight to those big censuses in the book. But the original Hebrew title, Bamidbar, actually means in the wilderness.
Hmm.
And that, I think, really sets the stage better. This wasn't just about geography moving from point A to point B. It was this profound spiritual journey for the Israelites.
Okay, building on that idea of the wilderness setting, let's talk structure. For a long time, scholars, well, they kind of saw numbers as a bit jumbled, stories mixed with laws, mixed with lists. Hard to see a clear thread sometimes. But this commentary, Currid's work, offers a really different, quite illuminating take on how it's organized. How does he suggest we make sense of all that diversity in the writing?
It's a great question because it really unlocks how we understand the book's purpose. Currid talks about this down-to-earth paradigm. He basically suggests the book's structure actually mirrors how the Israelite camp was physically laid out when they marched and when they stopped. Think about it. The tabernacle, God's dwelling, was right in the middle, physically central, with tribes arranged all around it, front and back. Currid argues the book does the same thing literarily. It starts with 6 sections of narrative and law, then it focuses right in on events of the tabernacle, and then finishes with another 6 sections of law and narrative. So it's not random at all. It's a very deliberate design.
Right. So seeing the book laid out like that,
Right.
what's the big takeaway? It's more than just neat organization, isn't it?
Oh, definitely. The powerful implication is that God, his presence, symbolized by that tabernacle, wasn't just an afterthought. He was smack dab in the center of Israel's whole existence. Physically, yes, but also spiritually, legally, even in how their story was told. This structure hammers home that their entire journey, every law, every failure, every bit of grace, it all revolved around their relationship with Yahweh. It really highlights God's careful ordering of his people and just how central holiness was meant to be.
That really does underline the intentionality of the text. Okay, so right at the beginning of this carefully ordered book, we hit those very detailed censuses you mentioned. Now, someone might just skim those lists, right? Names, numbers, yawn. But when you dig in, what's going on there? They weren't just counting heads, were they? In the ancient Near East, these had specific jobs.
It's exactly right. A census back then could be for several things: figuring out taxes, maybe raising funds for the sanctuary, or even assigning workers for, sacred building projects or duties. But its main use, and what we see emphasized in Numbers, was military conscription, getting ready for potential conflict. That first census, the one in Numbers 1, it happened right there at Mount Sinai, and they had to get it done fast, within 20 days. Shows you how important it was. Now, there's been a lot of scholarly chatter about the numbers themselves. Some argue they seem way too high for that time period. Others suggest maybe thousands actually refers to military units, or perhaps the numbers are symbolic in some way.
Interesting. And how does Kurt address that debate, especially given, as you said, the main point of a census is usually accuracy?
Well, Curd points out what seems like an obvious irony, right? The whole point of a census is to get the numbers right. He argues that if we take these numbers as accurate, or at least reflecting a massive population, they serve as this incredibly powerful fulfillment of God's promises way back to Abraham. Remember, that his descendants would be like the stars in the sky, the sand on the seashore. So this isn't just logistics, it's proof of God's faithfulness over centuries.
Wow, okay. That puts a whole different spin on those lists.
And another fascinating detail showing God's specific ordering. Not everyone got counted in the main census, did they? The tribe of Levi was set aside. Yes, exactly. The Levites were specifically excluded from the military count. Their job wasn't warfare. It was the sacred duty of caring for the tabernacle. God's dwelling place right there among them. They were like a protective buffer, a shield, surrounding the tabernacle, guarding it from anyone unauthorized getting too close. This really highlights two things: the Emmanuel principle, God is with us, living right there, but also the intense seriousness of holiness. You couldn't just wander up to the sacred. And this careful ordering shows up in marching too. In Numbers 2, Judah's camp gets assigned the lead position. That's significant because Reuben, the firstborn son, traditionally would have been first. This shift fulfills Jacob's prophecy from Genesis, and it's an early pointer towards Judah's eventual prominence, the lineage leading to the Lion of Judah, David, and ultimately the Messiah.
It's clear, though, even with all this divine order, the journey was anything but smooth. The book is full of grumbling, complaints, even outright rebellion. What does the commentary highlight as maybe one of the toughest moments? And what does it teach us about divine authority?
Oh, one of the absolute standouts has to be Korah's rebellion in number 16. It's incredibly dramatic. What's key here is Korah, he was a Levite, related to Moses and Aaron, but not from the priestly line. He, along with Dathan, Abiram, and 250 community leaders, directly challenges Moses and Aaron. Their argument sounds almost democratic. All the congregation, all of them are holy, basically saying, why do you guys get to be in charge? We're all holy. But this wasn't just politics. It was a direct strike against God's chosen order for worship, for how people were meant to approach him. So Moses sets up this test with censers for offering incense. And God's response, it's immediate and terrifying. The ground literally splits open and swallows Korah, Dathan, Abiram, their families, everything they own, alive. Then fire flashes out and consumes the 250 men who were offering incense with them. It's a stark, stark picture of how seriously God takes his own established order and the consequences of trying to usurp his appointed leadership. Holiness and authority were not things to be trifled with.
Wow. From that kind of open rebellion, there's also this other pivotal moment, maybe less about outright defiance and more about a deep lack of faith. I'm thinking of the story of the spies. That had huge consequences too, didn't it?
It really did. And this episode, in Numbers 13 and 14, brings up that crucial issue of trust. 12 spies go into Canaan, the promised land, to check it out. 10 of them come back terrified. They give what the text calls an unfavorable report. They basically say, the people there are huge, giants. We felt like grasshoppers next to them. They completely exaggerated the challenges and totally minimized God's power, spreading fear through the whole camp. The people started weeping, wanting to go back to Egypt. They doubted God could actually deliver on his promise. But 2 spies, Caleb and Joshua, they saw the same things, but had a completely different perspective, a different spirit, the text says. They were like, we can totally do this. God is with us. Their faith was rock solid.
Such a contrast. And the fallout from that widespread fear.
The consequence was devastating. God decrees that that entire generation, everyone 20 years old and up, who grumbled and doubted, would die in the wilderness. They would never see the promised land. Only Caleb and Joshua from that group would survive to enter. It's a sobering lesson. And, it makes you think, how often do we do the same thing? We look at the giants in our lives, the challenges, and we forget God's power. We start feeling like grasshoppers. It's a timeless struggle, that tension between fear and faith.
Yeah, definitely something to reflect on. But even amidst these really harsh judgments for disobedience, God also provides these, remarkable ways towards healing, like that really striking story of the bronze serpent.
Right. If we look at Numbers 21, context is key. The people are grumbling again, complaining about the journey, the food. So God sends venomous snakes, fiery serpents among them, and many people get bitten and die. But then, when the people cry out in repentance, God tells Moses to do something strange. Make a serpent out of copper. Put it on a pole, lift it high. And anyone who had been bitten, if they just looked at that copper serpent, they would live. Now think about that. Healing comes through the very image of the thing causing the death. It's powerful symbolism. And incredibly, Jesus himself references this exact event centuries later. In John chapter 3, he says, just as Moses lifted up the serpent in the wilderness, so must the Son of Man be lifted up.
That whoever believes in him may have eternal life.
Wow. Exactly. It becomes this profound foreshadowing of the cross. Salvation coming through looking in faith at the one lifted up who took the venom of sin upon himself. It connects the Old Testament wilderness directly to the heart of the gospel.
That connection is amazing. Now, Numbers isn't all just high drama and rebellion. It also gets into some really specific laws and instructions, things that show God's, meticulous care, even in unusual situations, like the case of Zelophehad's daughters. That seems quite unique.
It really is a fascinating case found in Numbers 27 and then revisited in chapter 36. It definitely raises questions about fairness, inheritance rights, especially for women in that ancient context. So this man, Zelophehad, dies, but he only has daughters, no sons. Under normal custom, the family land inheritance would typically pass through male heirs. But these 5 daughters, they do something pretty bold. They go before Moses and the leaders and argue for their right to inherit their father's portion of the land. They make a point of saying their father wasn't part of Korah's rebellion, so his name shouldn't just die out. His lineage should continue through them and the land attached to it. Moses doesn't know what to do, so he takes their case directly to God. And Yahweh affirms their request. He says they're right, establishing a legal precedent. Daughters can inherit if there are no sons.
That's quite progressive for the time.
It really is.
Yeah.
But then later, another issue comes up. The clan leaders worry, hey, what if these daughters marry men from other tribes? Then the land, their inheritance, will transfer out of our tribe when the Jubilee year comes around.
All right.
So God gives a follow-up ruling. The daughters must marry within their own father's tribe. This way, the inheritance stays within the correct tribal allotment, preserving the larger community structure. It shows God's detailed legal guidance, balancing individual rights, the daughter's inheritance, with the need to maintain the integrity of the tribal land system he set up. Real attention to detail.
And speaking of God's specific words, there's that beautiful blessing in the beginning of the book, one many people know, even if they don't know it's from Numbers. The priestly benediction.
Ah yes, number 6.2426. It's so well known, but unpacking it reveals such depth. It's not just one blessing, but a threefold outpouring of God's favor. First, may Yahweh bless you and keep you. This points to, well, tangible blessings, prosperity, health, flourishing, and also divine protection, keeping you safe from harm. Second, may Yahweh make his face shine on you and be gracious to you. That image, face shine, is powerful. It means God looking on you with favor, with delight, the opposite of divine anger, and gracious, giving undeserved kindness. And third, may Yahweh lift up his face toward you and give you peace. Again, God's favorable attention. And peace here is shalom, which is so much more than just no fighting. It's wholeness, completeness, well-being, harmony at every part of life, deep satisfaction.
That's so rich.
It truly is. And this wasn't just theoretical. Archaeologists actually found 2 tiny silver scrolls in Jerusalem, dating way back to the 7th or 6th century BC, rolled up like little amulets, and inscribed on them parts of this very benediction. It shows how cherished and central this blessing was. It's this profound confirmation of God's fundamental goodness towards his covenant people, a truth we still cling to.
Absolutely. And one last point the commentary brings up, maybe on a more personal, practical level, the importance of vows.
Yes. Numbers 30 deals specifically with vows and oaths made to God. The emphasis is crystal clear. If you make a vow to Yahweh, a pledge to give something or to abstain from something, you must keep your word. The text outlines specific conditions, especially regarding women under authority, but the core principle is that promises made to God are binding. There aren't really any loopholes or excuses. And, in our world today, where sometimes keeping your word feels optional, this ancient law is a strong challenge. Be people of integrity, let your yes be yes, especially when you evoke God's name. Our words matter.
We've covered a lot of ground today, journeying through Numbers. We've seen Israel's meticulous organization around God's presence, their very human struggles with rebellion and fear, God's swift and serious judgments, but also his incredible grace, his detailed guidance in surprising ways, and his absolutely unwavering promises. It really feels like a snapshot of the whole human experience with God, doesn't
Yeah,
it?
it really does.
Hmm.
You see God's faithfulness to promises made centuries before, like with the census numbers reflecting Abraham's descendants. You see the terrible cost of disobedience in the wilderness generation. But then you also see these amazing pointers to future redemption, like the bronze serpent looking ahead to Christ. Numbers truly shows God's consistent character, holy, just, but also deeply committed to his people, even when they fail him repeatedly. It's a powerful, complex story.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the final thought for you, our listener, to take away from all this today?
Well, the book of Numbers really stresses God's timing, doesn't it? There was a right time for Israel to march, a right time to camp, a right time to act, and a right time simply to wait for God's leading, often symbolized by the cloud over the tabernacle. So maybe the question for you is this. Considering that emphasis on divine timing, what might it look like for you to really lean into trusting God's timing in your own life, especially when things feel uncertain, when the path forward seems difficult, maybe even like your own personal wilderness journey? How do you trust his timing then? It's something profound to consider.